You're here at Lakota Immersion Childcare. It's an immersion childcare. We only speak the Lakota language. The idea was that we would take 18-month-old children before they have started to speak and teach them Lakota as a first language as opposed to teaching them as a second language. We currently have 20 students enrolled at Lakota Immersion Childcare. We have 4 fluent speakers. We also have adult learners that are trying to become fluent. We're also branching into a lot of other things right now. We're trying to create curriculum. There's nothing created, there's very few things created in the language right now. So as we get our kids ready to start reading and to really, as they're starting to examine their worlds, we're trying to make sure that they have enough materials to really make their world a Lakota world. So apps for the iPads and the iPhones, videos, books. That's really what we're working on right now. So people are really wanting to rediscover their culture and rediscover their language, but it's how do we do it? You know, we've almost got to a couple generations where, you know, that their kids' parents, they don't speak anymore, and their grandparents are past child rearing age that do speak. So what are we able to do to help ensure that the language moves on to the future, and realize like how important that is as being a Lakota child and as a Lakota community, how important it is for the language to survive and to have a vibrant culture. And so we really had to address this and try to figure out what was the best way to do this. And so we looked at some other programs, Hawaii and Maori, and programs that were being successful in reviving their own Lakota, or their own native languages. And we decided that for us, we would start off with the daycare. And then we also and since there's only a few speakers that are adults, we do have some speakers that are adults. We're also taking some younger people that are, you know, around the 20-ish age, and teaching them to become Lakota fluent speakers too, so that they can pass it on to their own children and also become future teachers for our school as we move into school-age children. So we have 20 children. The farthest child comes from about 60 miles away, actually, Sharp's Corner. They drive in every morning. I apologize. The farthest kid comes from Rapid City. Their family moved to Rapid City, and then they work down here, and they drive every day for their child to speak Lakota. And it's kind of interesting about that child because that child is actually Dennis Banks' grandson. And his daughter, she works in Rapid. She lives in Rapid, but she bought a house in Rapid, but she works on the reservation. So she drives from Rapid every day and brings her son, wakes him up early to come to immersion daycare so that he can have that. I've talked to this a couple of times about how this is a very beautiful thing that my children are both grandchildren of Dennis Banks, and so he fought for these rights and fought for these opportunities, and he was one of the people that he went to boarding school and his language got taken away from him. And I think that it's a beautiful thing that in his lifetime he gets to see his grandchildren be a part of something like this immersion school or the Ojibwe immersion school, to see his grandchildren not having their language lost but having their language come back to them. And so I think that's a very beautiful thing.
I believe that this program and the method that they're using is very, very, very critical to get them at when they're babies and their minds haven't been developed, hearing the English words. It'll be developed into a Lakota mind right away. And I think that's what's crucial, because when I went to boarding school, I could speak very little English, but I could speak a lot of, and understand a lot of Ojibwe language. I think that when I was in boarding school, and the very first thing they did was they took all, we were naked, take all our clothes off, they put DDT on our, sprayed DDT on our hair, cut our hair off, and gave us new clothes, different kind of clothes. But it was the language that there was nuns there that were immediately taking charge of the conversion from Ojibwe to English, and it was very, very strict, very brutal, and so to see many years later, I'll be 78. Well, I'm 78 now, but 73 years ago, it was. I didn't hear this loving understanding of language, and there. It was sticks and straps that made us forget the Ojibwe language. That was, I mean, I went through it. I lived my life through it. I ran away from the schools. I ran away every chance that I could get, and then they kept at it. They kept their end of the deal by strapping and hitting and taking soap and putting it in our mouths, and so when Matt was talking to her, oh God, I was almost tearing up inside, because it's so. To me, it's beautiful to see this kind of program, and someday I will hear my grandchildren speak fluently the language, and I will learn from them.
I guess I'm just real impressed with the school that they have here, with the kids learning at the age that they're learning, because we never had that opportunity. I used to ask my mother different words in the language, and she would never communicate to me in the language because she was beaten for speaking the language. And she said that what they did back at the time that she was living is that they would transport different tribal kids from one end of the country to the other, so they couldn't communicate with each other, and if they were caught, they would be punished, beaten, and whatever else they could do to them. So I think that the boarding school really they set out to kill our culture and our language and our spirituality, and almost succeeded. We have very few speakers left, but I think that the commitment to our younger generations they're so hungry for the language and the culture and the spirituality that they're going to do anything. They're making the sacrifices to learn the language. I've got a granddaughter who is 25 years old, travels out to New York and Canada, and spends her own money to get out there and lives with families so that they can learn the language, so they can go back and get it and bring it back home. And she is the one, she has younger siblings, and she talks to them at home in the language, and it's really beautiful to see, and yet it's sad because we missed out on so much of it. There's so much. Like, I have a son who is fluent in the language, and what he did is every day he would spend time with the elders, just going over and going over and going over, and he would tape them. And then he also liked to work out and keep himself in shape, so what he did while he was riding the bicycle or working out is he would have earphones on, and he would just listen to the language constantly. He was just really driven, so now he's a fluent speaker for us, and it's amazing to hear when he can communicate with the elders and talk to them, or when he can, when we have ceremonies and he prays in the language. It's just, it makes me really proud, but it also makes me understand the commitment and the sacrifice it is for them to be able to get that back. It's just something that's so important, because what he says is there's a way to say the language. In the language, all the plants that we have, the medicines that we have, the ceremonies that we have, he said when you do it in English, it doesn't mean the same thing. There are words that we have in our language that are sacred words, and you use them in ceremonies and you use them when you talk, and it makes a difference in the translation. He said there's some of them you can't translate into English. There's no way. So I'm really happy to see this, and I think that there are several reservations that are trying, several nations that are trying to do the same thing. And I think the networking is really important, that that we get our leadership together and make them support us fully. Because I know, on my reservation, when some of the people were running for elected positions there, one of the things that they promised the people is that the language and the culture would be their first priority. They were saying there's going to be funding. I'm going to make sure there's funding for the language and the culture. That's important to me. That's a #1 priority. And then they get in office and that all goes by the wayside. And there is none there. We have some of the leadership saying, well, if you want to go out to New York and learn the language, that's on your own. Or to my daughter, or my granddaughter, who could have went for a 9-month total immersion program in Canada. They said, well, you're going to have to take an educational leave and pay for it on your own. This is all at your own expense. If you want to do that, then you're going to have to find a way to do it. So they have bake sales and rummage sales, and they do whatever they can to raise the money. But it's what I see is a real strong commitment in our young people who are so hungry for that culture, that spirituality, and the language that I don't think they're going to be stopped. We need that whole family to be together to do that, and to start when they're babies. So I really appreciate, all the hard work that you put into this, and the commitment that's here. Because when we were coming here, I said, on Pine Ridge they might be poor in materialistic things, but they're rich in culture and language, and spirituality. I think that a lot of people look to the Lakota people as fighting to hold on to that. And I really feel good about that. And that's one of the reasons we're out here, is to try to help support that and encourage that, whatever way we can do it. So.
When all of Dorothy's kids, I've seen them when they're babies and growing up. And Geronimo, of course, her son, I hadn't seen him for maybe about 10 years. I'd been traveling around with Herb, her ex-husband, and their dad. And then we went to a ceremony. Oh no, we went to a gathering, and they asked Geronimo to say a prayer before we ate. And I thought, of course, it was going to be English, but when he started speaking in the Oneida language, and it just flowed so beautiful, I was thinking, oh man, I was almost crying when I was thinking back. Oh man, this is what's happening. It's taking root with our kids.